Luckily, Ernest is also a very determined moose. He's not going to give up easily. He struggles to shimmy, shift, and shuffle in forward. He tries to squidge, squodge, and squeeze in backwards. Ernest's middle fits in easily, but what about the rest of him? Ernest is very disappointed. This book is just too small for him. Or is it? Ernest's little friend has a big idea. She fetches some masking tape, and Ernest collects some paper. And together they carefully crinkle, crumble, and stick. They are busy for a very long time. Finally, they are finished. Ernest may be a rather large moose, but now he has a very rather large book, and he fits in perfectly. The end.
All right, so in the chat, would some, all of you, write down some of the accommodations or adaptations. There were just a few in this book.
Fortunately, my computer connection went off,
Okay.
but I was listening.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to know, did you hear? I just wanted to know, he didn't fit, so they put their heads together so he could. Larger print. So what specifically did they do so he would fit? What was their idea? Because he couldn't fit in the book. They make the print larger. They used the paper, right? They wrapped him in the paper, and that was the book. Okay.
Paper was added, yeah.
Paper was added, exactly. So they added something to make him fit. Okay. Just wanted us to look. It was the same book, so it wasn't a modification. It was more of an adaptation, if we want to say. And the other thing, and I think a few people said this, he found a friend, so he worked together. Some adaptations, if we use our peers, we're going to talk about that. Sometimes kids respond a lot better to a peer than even the teacher. So those would be two adaptations that we saw. Okay, and thank you. And some of you are even giving me like, how could I adapt it for a student? So, right, you could make the print larger. I meant like, how did they adapt Ernest so he fit into the book? But thank you. All right. Okay, so let me go back to sharing my PowerPoint. Okay. So this is from, and I'm going to get into this, but two books that I really used for this presentation are a book called Building Blocks and Kara's Kit, which I'm sure you've heard us talk about for years at StarNet, but I'm going to go into them a little bit more. But I really like this from Building Blocks, and they talk about this foundation, okay? So at the bottom of any program, we have to have a quality early childhood program, okay? If our program's not so great, even if we do adaptations, there still might be some things hindering the child. But I'm sure you guys are all in quality early childhood programs. After that, the next step up is what we're talking about today, making curriculum modifications and adaptations. Even more support for a child, because as we're blending, we know that there are children that need more supports than others, or a simple adaptation or modification might not work, is embedded learning opportunities. I am going to get into that today. I'm going to explain the basics of that, but then our follow-up webinar, I'm really going to go a little deeper into that. And then there are still children that need that child-focused instructional strategies, okay? And that could even be some of our children that are in our autism, our self-contained autism programs, where they're working individually in their cubicle. Some children need that in order to learn the skill to join the bigger group. So I really liked this model of sort of stepping stones. But as I said, doesn't matter what we do, if we don't have a nice, strong, quality early childhood program, that's what really matters. And even to get into, for the blended PFA programs, that's the goal of Eckers, right? Eckers is monitoring you, not to ding you, to make sure that you really have a quality program that you're offering the student. And what was the name of Ernest's book? Okay, that is called Ernest the Moose Who Doesn't Fit, and it's by Catherine Rayner, Rayner. Really cute book. Okay, so as I said, these are the two books that I really took everything from today. We have both in the StarNet library. I can't say enough about these books. What they do is, well, first of all, Building Blocks really goes into that embedded instruction and that focused instruction, individualized instruction, but it also looks at each center and offers you suggestions about how to adapt in the different ways for each centers. And I'm going to give some of those suggestions today. So Building Blocks, now see, they call these modifications. In my mind, these are adaptations. These are not modifications, but they got their book published. So that's why I'm saying people use them interchangeably. Why I like this and why I want to go through this is a couple things happens. First of all, we say, I tried that for the child and it didn't really work. He still can't do it. First of all, with any of these adaptations, I know you guys know as experienced teachers, we have to try things several times in order for it to work for a child, okay? When people tell me visuals don't work, the first thing I would think is, how long did you introduce that visual to the child, right? You can't, I think about like a husband, right? You can't just ask your husband to do something once and he does it. We often have to teach our husband how to pick up after themselves, for example. So that's the same with the child. So when you try, if there's an adaptation I suggest today and you're like, I think that could work for someone, you got to try it for, really, they say sometimes 2 weeks in order for it to, for you to see progress with the child. So the other thing is, I'm going to ask you guys to share. You can unmute yourselves, you can chat, but the whole reason of this workshop and the next one is I want you guys are out there in the trenches doing this. So if you're doing an adaptation that is like this, please share when I ask you to share. So let's start with environmental. I think we all do a lot of environmental adaptations, but I liked some of these. So just using color tape on the floor to indicate a child's space, right? So we're all still working even on standing in line, all right? So if you have that child that's always touching the child in front of them, maybe they need a little red square and that's where they stay. Maybe they need that little square on the carpet. Maybe they even need something taped off when they're using tabletop toys, just to let them know where their space is. Another environmental support would be providing something physical to help me transition. So it's almost like a visual schedule for the child, but you're using the real thing. So if it's snack time, you're going to give me a spoon and I go over and I eat snack, for example. If I chose to go to the block center, you're going to hand me a block, and that reminds me that I have to go to the block center. Because how many kids, especially now, as I like to say in the beginning of the year, say they choose in large group that they want to go to the block center, and then the next thing you know, they're sort of roaming and they haven't gone. Okay, but this little support might help them. This one I can't stress enough. We don't all have to sit on the same thing at circle time, okay? Somebody can be sitting in cube chair, someone can be on a carpet square, someone can be on a rocking chair. If it's going to help me sit and concentrate longer or be able to sit and participate longer, then provide the other things. Now, I know it's just like with fidgets. People say, well, if he has a rocking chair and he's sitting on a carpet, he might like it. You can let everybody use what they need, and the kid that doesn't need the rocking chair won't go there. Or you take the time to explain that we're letting Becky sit in the rocking chair because it helps Becky concentrate. You know, we all have differences. I wear glasses. You know the speech. But explain why someone maybe is sitting in a different chair. I really like this one. Somebody that's kind of always, touching everybody's stuff. If you give them like a lunch tray, or you can buy a tray, or all those plastic trays are now on sale for like summer stuff. Give them a tray, and when you play at the tabletop toys or fine motor, your toys stay in the tray. When you dump your toy, you dump it in the tray. Okay? Because then my toys aren't all over the table and I'm not interfering with other people's space. And then this is just an obvious one, but rearranging the furniture in the room so a wheelchair can really go smoothly, walk around smoothly. If a child's in a wheelchair, they should have access to all the centers, okay? So if you've made your centers like little rooms and there's one entrance, can a wheelchair get in? Maybe you just want your centers to be, more three sides and it's open very wide in the beginning. Or maybe you want less furniture. One thing, we haven't gone in classrooms now for 3 years because of COVID, but when we would go in and help with, back in the day, with Eckers setting up classrooms, sometimes, now I lost my train of thought. I would say, you have too many tables. Maybe you don't need this table. And I know teachers, when they get furniture, they don't like to let go of furniture. But if you have too much furniture in the classroom, let alone a child in a wheelchair, just do the children, can they move around smoothly? If I'm bumping into things and you have to constantly tell me not to, that would be an environmental support, is getting rid of some extra furniture. So here's just some pictures of stuff that we had in the office. We actually have this bottom left-hand picture. I like this. I ordered this a while ago. This again is for that child that chooses to go someplace but doesn't always make it there. They would choose the wristband. They wear the wristband, and it's almost like a beanbag. It's just a square piece of fabric. That fabric is where they're supposed to be going. Okay, so it's like a matching activity. I'm wearing the green wristband, and I see over there at Dramatic Play is the green fabric, and I know I have to get there. Some kids, we know a timer, and I like to say a variety of timers. I know most of us, a lot of us, use the timer now, but some kids might focus into, if it's like a short, quick thing, maybe you want a short 30-second sand timer. Back in the day when my kids were little and they would fight over computer time, by mistake, I bought a timer from Target that actually rang like it gave them a warning. So I think it rang at 5 minutes and then again at 3 minutes or something like that. So for my kids, when I said you have 10 minutes to play on the computer, when it rang the first time, they knew that it was their time was almost up. Not that they knew what 5 minutes was. The top picture is just putting a surface that's slanted, and maybe a child's able to write, color, draw better than on a flat surface. So it's easier to draw like this than to draw like that. So a simple environmental change like that might get a child to write, maybe a child that doesn't like to write. The middle picture shows, and I know you guys know, and I think I have another picture of all the different types of seating there's out there. I like this top one, and I know people actually do this because the maintenance people have asked them to do this, putting the tennis balls on the bottom of chairs. So yes, it doesn't scratch your floors, but it also helps that it slides easier. So the child that doesn't really have the strength in their legs to push a chair out. And again, remember, all these adaptations go back to why we want children to be independent. Okay, they should be able to access everything in the classroom without our help. So if a child doesn't have leg strength to push themselves, away from a table, putting these little tennis balls on the bottom of a chair makes it slide real easily. And now maybe I can push away from the table independently. And then we all use pictures, but putting it on the Kleenex box. So when colds start, hopefully just colds and no COVID, you don't have to tell a child 12,000 times how to blow their nose. We can say, go get a tissue and look at the pictures. Okay, so that's an environmental support within your classroom. Any questions?
No.
Okay. If you would like to unmute, or would people please chat, can you think of some environmental adaptations that you've done in your classroom? So this is our time to share classroom, or we do have some related services. So, have you done something on the playground if you're a physical therapist for a child, or on the bus? I have some speech pathologists. Anything to adapt the environment. So a sensory chair, okay? Stool under the feet for a shorter child, perfect. Cube chairs, right. A lot of us have used different chairs. I just saw a great, and I didn't have time. Put a cube chair inside a hula hoop. I love it. So the hula hoop is like the tape that shows that child where his boundaries are. One table that's tall and one that's short. I'm going to talk about that later. Lap pads. Oh, that's another great different surface for a child. Sensory water mat. A stool for toileting. Great. That's I didn't at all talk about that. Yes. Good. Thank you. I just saw another chair that Velcro on the bottom. Dana, what does the Velcro on the bottom of the table do?
You can run your fingers along the bottom for that tactile input.
Cool.
So if they're fidgety, so rather than having a fidget in their hand, you have the.
Okay, I really like that.
Underneath the table.
Yeah, because I wanted to talk about that. Just like when we talk about sensory toys, which can be an adaptation, some kids, as you know, might need these adaptations the rest of their life. So our goal is to make them the most age appropriate, right? So people talked about lap pads. So maybe when I'm an adult and I have my own office, I could have a lap pad. But what would be more appropriate when I'm in high school, for example? So this is the perfect example. Velcro under my desk. Nobody needs to know I have that. As opposed to holding a toy that maybe I'm squishing. So great idea. Okay, so the chair that I just saw was taking those big, I don't know if they're 10-gallon paint buckets, or if your kids play baseball or softball, the coaches throw all the balls in there, and they cut out on one side like a U and put a cushion in it because it's almost like a cube chair, right? Our kids like that tight space. So I thought that was another great environmental chair choice. Okay, thank you for sharing. And yes, that hula hoop was a great idea. All right, we all do this a lot, so I think that you will have ideas for me. So adaptations for material in the classroom. So we have paintbrushes at the easel. Do you have a child that really is not holding that paintbrush properly? There's many adaptations we could do, right? We could put tape around it to make it thicker. We could put foam around it to make it thicker. We can offer different brushes. Not everybody has to paint with the same type of brush. So also taping the table. So taping whatever the child's working on. I think someone even talked about this. So if I'm painting on a table or if I'm writing on the table, just putting a little piece of tape on my paper, because I might not have learned the skill of holding the paper and coloring. Okay, so just a little piece of tape can help me, and now I can focus. Go back to my son Aaron and the coloring. The point of that activity, or the point of putting paper out in your writing center or your art center, is to do art, right? Yes, I have to learn how to do that, but if you want me to be able to do art, just giving me that little tape right now can help me. This is, for more complex, but adding a switch to a toy. So I saw a really cute video of a boy in a wheelchair, and boys like to do in the block center is build towers. So this teacher helped him build a tower. The boy was able to tell her what blocks he wanted, but then she had a little remote control car, kind of like a easy Fisher Price one, and the kids could use the remote control to knock the tower down. So that let the boy participate in the same activity that the other boys were doing, as opposed to like kicking it down or whatever. So someone already talked about this. Someone talked about having different size tables in their room. But if you have a kid that is in a wheelchair or in a stander, or even doesn't have, can't stand for that long, consider having a tabletop easel. Okay. Now, I want people that are in PFA programs before this comes out, if you need to make an adaptation or a modification for a child that has an IEP, this is okay. And more blended classrooms, we're going to have to look at this. All you need to do is, when the monitor is there, you need to just speak out loud. So you need to say, Becky, would you like me to put the easel on the table so you can paint today? That's all. All right. Because again, go back. All children should be able to have access, should be able to be independent, should be able to participate. And then there's many different ways. If you have a child that goes to your library and can't turn pages by themselves, just taking a popsicle stick, a craft stick, and you tape it to each page of a favorite book, that makes turning the page easier. I just saw also, before I got on, putting paper clips. So they make those cute colored paper clips now. That makes turning the pages easier. So I set a timer for 5 minutes before cleanup, and then start the cleanup when the timer goes off. A visual for the whole class. And a student also has their own schedule using a file folder. Great. And marking it when they're done. Great, Crystal. And then just to show this picture, this is just in our office alone. There are so many, as I'm sure you guys know, varieties of crayons now. But let's not just order one type, okay? Because, for example, good old Aaron, who's now a grown married man, I want you all to know, but the bottom left, those Lyra crayons, they're like oil-based or something, so they flow very smoothly. It's Lyra. So for a child like Aaron that pushed real hard, these would just flow easily. And then we have the rock crayons. Some of these we heard, I don't know if any of you ever heard Marianne Gibbs speak. She's spoken for us a couple times. She's an occupational therapist. Her website is Right Out of the Box, WRITE. And she has several of these crayons, but she sells these little rock crayons. You can get them on Amazon also. This is for a kid that doesn't have a good grip. Sometimes just gripping that more of a circular crayon could help me draw. And then we have some short crayons. And then we also have, some of those crayons are almost like a triangle. And so again, you just want to practice and see what works for different children. Okay, I moved my people and now you're in the way. Hold on. There we go. Nope, hold on. Too many things opened. Okay, and here are just some more examples of some things, adaptations we have in the classroom. So I saw this when I went to a DDC conference once. Some people don't like this idea, and I'll tell you why. These are just handles from a milk carton. The reason I like them is look how simple to cut the milk carton, and then it makes it accessible for some children. I guess it can be sharp. So if it's sharp, you just would want to put tape around the cut edge. But for a child that doesn't have a good hand grasp, now I could play with a little car in the block center. Okay. Here's another way for me to, if you don't have different crayons in your classroom, here's a way for me to hold a crayon. All right. And then again, that middle picture is just the different ways that I can paint. So you might have one paintbrush at the easel, but I want you to think about, what about the kid that can't paint at the easel? What can I do for that child? Okay. This is, one I think we're very good at. Any material adaptations people would like to share? Either chat or unmute.
Popsicle sticks on the corners of books, pages to help a child turn easier.
Yes, perfect. Good. Anything else? Oh, break my crayons. Great one. Yes. I've heard you can break them, or I've heard people just using their broken crayons and making sure they're in a like special container so children can use them that need them. A pencil eraser to turn pages because it's kind of tacky. Yes. Zip ties on zippers of book bags. Oh, perfect. In case I can't grasp that little zipper. Okay. What else? Yes, whiteboards instead of paper. Absolutely. And I was in a classroom years ago that the teacher actually had some whiteboards mounted to her wall so the kids could lay down and color on those whiteboards or sit. All right, great. Anything else? Okay. Okay, activity simplification is the next. And I wanted to, what I didn't say is this is a bit of a, this one isn't, forget it. I won't say that. All right, this is a big one that I think we really need to look at. You know, many times we have the wanderer, the kid that can't get engaged, right? We have that big chunk of time, an hour of our 2.5 hour day, the kids are playing. So how can I make it so a child can play more interactively? So there are many children that just don't know how to play in a center. So you might need to, especially now that it's the beginning of the year, provide some play scripts with pictures so I know what to do. So when I go to dramatic play, I'm in there and I teach the child, oh, I'm getting ready for school. I have to make breakfast. Can you make me breakfast? I put this in there. You know, I have to make sure you have a plate, a cup, and a knife. I put this on the table. And you could make a script with some pictures, or you could just do this script with a child several times. Again, right? I have to practice this several times so I learn how to do it. I really like this one. If a child's overwhelmed with puzzle pieces or any of that, I think of all of our fine motor little boxes, right? There are many children that, especially at the beginning of the year or depending on their developmental level, there's too many pieces to those things. So if there's too many pieces and you find a child just dumping, maybe you start with less pieces. So let's think about the sorting teddy bears that everybody has, right? Instead of putting out all 80 teddy bears at the beginning of the year, maybe I have 10 of each color, all right? And it's easier. Or again, if a child just dumps a puzzle and then gets lost and doesn't know what to do, yes, you could hand them one piece at a time. Or I even like this picture where you kind of line up the pieces for the child so they're in the child's view. Crystal says, play scripts and modeling. My wanderer also has behaviors. Different voices are used, and with students I know they'll play along. Then I slowly fade away when the student holds interest. Right. Exactly. Thank you, Crystal. I don't want to fade away until I see the child is involved in the activity. And that's why some of these play scripts you might have to do several times. Crystal, if you don't mind unmuting, when you say different voices, you yourself use different voices to teach the child? To model for the child?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute it, but yeah, just to because my student has a lot of behavior issues, so getting his attention is really hard. And then if I keep with my same monotone voice, there's no interest at all. So like by providing those differences, then he holds more interest more often.
Perfect. Love it. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Christy, you also talk about a first then. Perfect, right? Okay, so that will be, you know, and you can use a first then, you know, you first do the puzzle, then we could do this. But we also could do first sort the bears, then dump the bears, right? The activity that the child might prefer to do. I liked this idea, and again, not all these ideas are mine. A lot are from this Building Blocks book. But if a child takes a long time walking to the bus, so sometimes, I don't know if anyone's in this situation, but I've been to some early childhood programs that are in like the middle school or the high school, as awful as that sounds, or that you're at one end, early childhood always gets the farthest room, and you have to walk to the other end of the school. So strategically placing something that will catch the child's attention. So it's almost like a treasure hunt as we walk to the bus, and that will keep the child moving instead of stopping and dawdling. So here's just a couple ideas of some things that we had in our office for activity simplification. So again, this would be a little sand table. If I go to the sand table now and I tend to throw the sand, maybe I need to start with a self-contained box and just a few items. And here are picture steps, not just pictures, but the steps with numbers that shows me how to make a sandcastle, for example. The middle picture, I'm not sure if people are aware of the books called Task Galore. There's about 4 of them, and they're from the TEACH program for children with autism, but they break down simple tasks. There's one for circle time, and there's one for playing, and they teach a child how to play. So this is just an example of a visual that a child might learn to start. I'm in the block area, and I have autism, for example, so I'm going to go just line up the cars. But we want the child to start building with blocks. So I could model and show him this picture. First, get me a red block. Okay, now we're going to put 2 red blocks now, and I point to it. I'm going to put the orange block. I know you guys know how to do this, but this is a visual that you could have prepared. And then this last one I actually made on the right-hand side. I don't know if you have this, but there are kids that get out to recess and they don't know what to do, right? They run, which can be fine, but there are things to do and they don't know what to do. So this is a choice board for recess or for gross motor time, whatever we call it these days. On the left-hand side, I might have 3 things I can do. So I can swing, slide, or climb. In the middle is 1 piece of Velcro. Right when I get outside, the child is going to choose what they're going to do first, and they put it in the middle. When you see that child kind of back to their roaming and not really doing gross motor, I bring the clipboard to them, right? It's transportable. And I say, and now they move that picture over to the right because they're done with that choice. I can see you're done swinging. What do you want to do now? Again, do I need to do this all year? Maybe for some children, but other children, maybe if I do this adaptation for a while, they then learn these are the things that I can do while I am outside. Am I able to send, Crystal, I will look if I have that in the office or if that was a picture from a presentation, but I am going to look at that, and if I have the steps, I will send that. Any questions?
What are all the choices on that board? It's hard to read.
On the clipboard?
Yes.
Okay, I think I really made them up. It was slide. Yeah, because I think I made this just for a presentation. I know there's slide and swing.
Rope.
Let me see.
Fine.
Oh, climb. I can't read what the middle one is.
Rope.
Right.
Rope.
But again, like you gotta, you have to think about what are your options in your playground. Okay. So what is it? And do you bring anything? The other thing I want to say is there are some kids that, maybe gross motor is difficult for me, so I'm not going to choose all the time to climb, for example. So maybe you bring like some book bags, a bag of books outside, or you bring some dramatic play stuff. So maybe your choices would be 2 kind of motor things and 1 non-motor. So once, if I tend to choose the books for the first time, then after they're done with that, then the 2 choices left are motor. So I'm having the child choose some more motor things to do. And again, if you're a PFA classroom, there's sort of those 8 motor options that we're supposed to have for kids outside. And 8 might be too many, right? So you might only want to offer 3 or 4 choices for a child. Any other questions? You want?
Hi, I have a question.
Go
I have
ahead.
a question.
Go ahead.
What did you say, Task Galore? Is that a book or
Yes,
is
it's
that
called, there are 4 books. It's from the hold on. I'm at my desk and I keep reaching for my other computer mouse. It's from the Teach program. Oh my goodness. Now I don't know if it's 2. I think there might be 2 letters in there, but it's called Task Galore. And I don't know where you're located, but we do have them in our office. And they really are phenomenal books. I think you can even get them off of Amazon now. Okay, people are asking if I have the pictures also for the tissues. It's basically pick a tissue, wipe your nose, throw the tissue away, wash your hands. It's what you want the kid to do when whatever your rules are for blowing your nose in the classroom. Okay, anybody have any other activity simplifications that you've done in your classroom? Okay, quiet. Okay, child preference. This is an important one. I think sometimes we say that children have obsessions, right? But child obsessions or preferences can be used as a learning tool, and a really important one. So if a child doesn't ever choose to go to the library and you want them to start looking at books more, then okay, put a book in the library of something you like. You know they like dinosaurs, have 3 books on dinosaurs. You know they like Thomas the Tank, have books on Thomas the Tank. Do we want them only reading those books? No, but just like someone talked about before, I'm going to then, I think it was Krista, I'm going to model for that child, right? To pick something different after I get them there. But I've gotten them there because of their preference. I really like this one. If a child won't sing during, it's not supposed to be small group, it's supposed to be during group time, let them pick the song. So the picture here that with Old McDonald's, I just had 5 songs that we sing all the time in circle time, right? And they're just on a little stick, on a popsicle stick. And when it's song time, you let the children pick. The child that isn't very active in circle time, let them pick what song they want to sing. And then maybe you could get them to stay and increase their length of time that they're staying in large group. And then even with someone I think needs to mute. Okay.
It's me.
Okay. Also, using the child's favorite person to help them transition. Okay, so even using a peer to help them transition. And we do that. I talk about a lot of us have sort of that mother hen in the classroom that can get you to do something. That will remind a child to do something. So again, don't look at it as an obsession, okay? If you can get a child to interact in an activity. I had a little boy, I'm dating myself, but I was in the classroom as a speech pathologist, and he was everything Thomas. And let me tell you, in kindergarten, I integrated Thomas into everything, into his math, into his reading, whatever it was a way to get Danny over to the activity, okay? So again, we don't want the child just to play with that preference, but that's an entrance into whatever I'm trying to teach or get the child to do. Does anybody have a child in their classroom that they can think of that currently has a strong preference and a way that you could integrate that into a lesson?
I have one that has an obsession with dinosaurs. So like I have anything imaginable with dinosaurs that you can think of, along with like even like his visual board even has like dinosaur So he
Perfect.
can move them around and things like that.
Yes, Crystal, thank you. That's great. Right. Even into their schedule, okay? If you're really trying to teach them how to use this thing or get their attention, start by having their preference on that visual schedule. Perfect. Good idea. Okay, this one I think we all know, but look at this special equipment. The one point, I'm not going to read this slide, but the point I want to make about this is oftentimes I see that special equipment used during circle time. Okay, I need to have access all day long. So do I need those special chair? Do I need those special scissors? Do I need that, whatever that equipment is? And this is where you have to work with whoever it is, whatever related service person it is, to make sure that that child, again, has access all day long. What special equipment does that child need in order to participate? And think about the level, okay? Again, this is a big thing. If you have a child in a wheelchair, I don't want to be the only one at this level. If everybody is sitting on the floor, so using a beanbag chair, do you know how to position me in a big beanbag chair so I can be on the floor with everybody else? Picture of mom and family board. We'll go to the picture and talk to mom instead of the group. Yes, absolutely. That child, you could make a copy of that picture and maybe you make that picture smaller and the kid could bring it to group time to get him over. Yes, good idea. So here's just some special equipment we talked about, but we know there are many supports now that are smaller that can bring a child down to the level of the other children, and they can still have the trunk support that maybe they'd have in their wheelchair. I like that little, I don't know, what do you call it? The wiggly cushions, right? So again, do you have a kid that doesn't sit even not in large group, but do they not sit in activities? Like, can you not get them to do tabletop activities because they don't sit in a chair that long? If you added a little wiggle cushion, would they maybe sit a little longer at tabletop toys? What type of special equipment do you guys have in your rooms right now? Anybody? Anybody have any kids in wheelchairs or walkers or standers or?
We don't have anybody in wheelchairs, but we have a lot of adaptable chairs. A lot of things that you've displayed here and rocking little kid chairs and all that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Bean bags, adaptable chairs. Yeah. Right. Lots of different chairs out there. Right. The balls, we haven't even talked about the exercise balls. Yes. Good. Glad to see it. Okay. So kind of the highest level, like we don't want to offer this. If these other things could work, it's better. But we do know some children do need that adult support, right? They do need that hand over hand. They might need an adult sitting directly behind them to get them to stay at circle time. Joining a child, and we talked about this before, but joining a child during center times and really kind of showing them how to play, right? We like to take children's lead, but there are some children that just do not know how to play. All right. Well, years ago, I worked with a program that now all early childhood classrooms were going to use creative curriculum. And she had a self-contained classroom. She was beginning the year and it was for boys with autism. Okay. She could not open every center. First of all, everybody would be playing by themselves. So when I was working with her, we really did what we were talking about was making those scripts, and her assistant were going to just take 2 and 2 kids in a center and teach them how to play in the center. Okay. So come the end of September, maybe they could start to independently play. But in the beginning of the year, they really needed this strong adult support in order to learn how to play in centers. And I like this one, okay? This might be happening to some of you. The child that just doesn't quite get the cleanup thing yet. So positioning an adult by them and giving them some cues. So if they're blocked, could you pick up all the square blocks for me? Can you put away all the little cars for me? Okay, we're teaching them and giving them that support of how to clean up. Some of these things I think you, and I know you guys probably do all the time, but I want you to step back and say, these are adaptations. And am I going to fade it? Is this not working? Can I try a different adaptation? Or do I need to add in some adaptations so maybe some of my behaviors will go away? Okay, so that kid that's not cleaning up, it's not that that child's bad. Maybe that child does not know how to clean up. Or they're overwhelmed. There's too many toys out. I think that's what we see more. I need someone to mute again, please. And these are just, simple pictures, right? That hand over hand, modeling how to play in a certain center. Sometimes I can't sit and listen to a story with a big group, but if you read me a story with just 2-3 kids, I can participate and listen to that story. Okay, almost done with From Building Blocks, and Kara's kid is very similar, but that peer support. Be conscious, peers can be an absolute adaptation. Pairing a child, all right? So you get a new child in your class that doesn't know the classroom routine. A peer adaptation could be pairing them with a child that has strong play skills and say, why don't you follow John around at Centers today? He's going to be your play buddy. All right, so you could do that. Have a child with fine, strong motor skills play with a child with weaker fine motor skills at the tabletop toys. So that child can start progressing maybe to a toy that he wouldn't normally be able to play with. But maybe if a child starts doing it, the other child has a model of a peer now and they can see how that works. And again, we all know peers are the best teacher, right? And this is what we want. These pictures kind of, to me, this is what we want in early childhood. This is what we want in early childhood inclusion, because then we don't see differences as we grow up. So that's why if you can use a peer as a support, that's a perfect adaptation. Anybody have an example of using a peer? Okay, so this one I like a lot is invisible. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to share with you that, primarily my involvement is with children that are on the spectrum. And so one little guy, we decided to make pictures of the children, going for when we would go to the restroom for a break or something. And this one kid never would move. And so I would manage to get the other children to take him a picture back of what was going to happen next. And he seemed to have been a little bit more comfortable with engaging with us and, going to the potty.
Right. And that visual, I think, helped him. That visual
reminded
him of what he was doing. Right. Good example. So just want to end From Building Blocks, this invisible support. This takes a little bit more planning, but can be so effective, okay? So invisible support is purposely arranging naturally occurring things that happen in an activity to allow a child to participate. So a child that's learning to pour and you have self-serve snack center, okay? You want that child to pour their juice after 2 other kids have poured, so there's barely anything left in that container. That's a visible support. You thought about it, but you're letting that child be independent. A student needs work sitting at group time for longer periods. You could look at your schedule within group time, okay? So do you sit and do something? Do you stand up and move? Do you sit? Do you stand up and move? And again, it shouldn't even be that long, but some kids need that movement. A child only plays with one toy at Block Center. You could set up to have another toy right where his toy is, or you could move your toy. So I only play with this one type of block, you could take a car and start driving and say, I'm driving around your house now. Look at my car. Okay, so you could model how you can integrate a car into his block play. One last great example, I saw a video a long time ago of a little boy with autism out on the playground just kind of walking in circles, and there were kids riding tricycles, kind of, I think there was a trike path, and what the teacher did was she sort of kicked a tricycle in front of the boy as he was doing his sort of repetitive circle. He got right on that bike, but they get in their own zone. So he was in his zone of probably stimming, walking in a circle. But when something came into his zone, he got right on that bike and rode bikes with kids. So again, takes a little bit more planning, but can be very effective, this invisible support. Just some of the examples that I gave you. So again, I think a lot of you sign on thinking about what can I do for that child that's sort of wreaking havoc in my classroom, the child with behavior issues. I want you to look at that child and think about that child now. And are there some of these adaptations that we just went through, all these different types, right? I know you adapt in your classroom, but is there a different adaptation you maybe could try? And is that child maybe telling you, we all know the behavior normally is telling us something. So what is that child telling you? Does he not know how to play? Is he overwhelmed? He's telling you something. And look at maybe changing your adaptation type to maybe help that child. So oh my God, I keep reaching for the mouse on my desktop and I'm not using my desktop. I want to share with you a really great two things. First of all, I don't know if I'm going to, oops, wait a minute, stop sharing. Share screen. Oh, Google, here we go. When I talked about, I want to make sure that you guys are familiar with the Early Choices program and their website, okay? It's eclre.org. And they have a ton of tools on their website, a ton of resources. If you go into this planning tool and you click on student and classroom, you can click on family if you want to share some family resources. They have wonderful, wonderful resources. And this live binder has even more links that they constantly add to. But what I want to show you today is we don't need to reinvent the wheel. They came up this summer with this great PDF, which is 100 ways to adapt in early childhood. And what it does is it walks through, it talks about overall classroom ways to adapt. But then it goes through each center. So how can I add to visual components? Here's all different adaptations for visuals, okay? Here's adaptations for the library center. Here's some adaptations for the writing center. Goes through each center. So that's a wonderful resource. Again, it's on eclre.org. I wanted to share that with you. So if I haven't given you enough resources today, there's 100 more. Okay. Okay, so I feel like I'm running out of time. So I'm going to go through this quickly again, because I said this is what we're going to do on our second part of this webinar. But embedded learning opportunities are focused episodes of teaching a child an individual objective, okay? And there's 7 steps that you have to go through. Again, this is more, but remember, we're stepping up now. I tried several adaptations and the child needs more support, or there's something specific on their IEP that I really want to address and make sure that the child is progressing. So I'm going to figure out, what do I want that child to learn? I'm going to sort of assess where the child is and see what their current level of performance is. And then I'm going to look during the day, what's the most natural time that I could get this child to do this behavior, okay, whatever it is on their IEP. And then I'm specifically planning kind of a script for myself or my assistant of what I'm going to do, what I'd like the child to do, and then how I'm going to respond to the child. I'm going to try it out during whenever I said. Again, I have to do this multiple times to see if it's working. I'm going to track the progress. And then periodically, I'm going to check to see if my objective has been met. And when you're doing embedded learning, you're asking yourself kind of these 3 questions. What am I going to teach? So what specifically is it that I'm trying to get the child to learn? And the biggest thing with embedded instruction, it happens during the day. No child is pulled. And you know, the OT can have their specific objective they want to embed, the speech pathologist, the teacher. So when during the day, and it's not just during playtime, if I'm the OT and there's a specific objective, it might be when the child gets off the bus. It might be I'm going to set up something out on the playground. And then how am I going to teach it? You have to have a specific plan. You're very intentional as you're doing this. So you're asking yourself, am I doing this? Is it working? And am I making a change? And when you're asking yourself these questions, you're being so intentional with this objective. You're seeing, did I do it when I said that I'm going to do it? And in that Building Blocks book, they have several planning forms. I didn't share them with you because sometimes people are overwhelmed by forms. But if you're the type of person that likes a form, you can really write out, you know, specifically during this time is when we're going to do it. And how is it working? Again, I know it's working because I have to collect documentation. You're already collecting documentation for other kids. You're specifically collecting not a lot of documentation, but enough to see if this specific instruction, the specific support you're giving the child, if it's making a difference. All right, so I want to get into, this is Kara's kit. And again, you can see many of the type of adaptations I'll go through quickly are the same as building blocks. But what I like about Kara's kit is 2 things. They look at this as a continuum, okay? From the least intrusive type of support I can give a child to the most intrusive. So you remember I said that I said when the teacher is doing hand over hand, we know that's the most intrusive. Sometimes I have to start at that. But as we scaffold, I want to get down. I want to provide an adaptation that is the least intrusive. So I like the way that Kara's kit looks at this. And they say the least intrusive, as we know, is starting with changing, what can I make a change in the environment? I also can look at changing up my schedule. Can I make it flexible? Somebody talked about some child having an individual schedule, right? That's providing support for a child. Oftentimes, again, when we go into the classroom, and I think Eckers has helped us looking at the flow of your schedule. Do you have too many transitions in your schedule? That can cause behavior problems for children. Or are your transitions not clear for children? And then Kara's kit looks at looking at your activities and your routines. Okay, your routines have to meet a child's ability. So, for example, if now it's easy because there's not that much to get when we're going home. But if going home or morning routine seems to be havoc for a child, do you have to break down that routine for the child? Okay. Do you have to hand one picture at a time? Maybe you have a little routine schedule posted for the child, but they're not following it. Maybe at this point they have to be on Velcro and the child has to rip off each part of that routine. So get my papers, done. Put my papers in my backpack, done. Put my backpack on, done. Line up, done. Okay, so that would be modifying within the activity or routine. We talked about modifying materials, adapting materials. also just changing the requirements. So again, I'm working from least restrictive to most restrictive, okay? So this is getting a little bit more. Now I'm changing what I expect the child to do. So for example, just how long a child has to sit at circle time. And I want to make, we didn't really talk about that. It is okay if I cannot sit the whole time in an activity, but it doesn't mean I can roam the room freely. So I had a boy that could not sit at math, our 20 minutes of math we did at kindergarten. I probably shouldn't have been sitting for 20 minutes anyway. He was allowed to go do two things. He was allowed to cut paper and watch it fall. It was sort of a stim thing, but it calmed him down. Or he was allowed to color with markers. So he knew when he had to get up, he could go do those two things. Did I let him do that all year? No. We worked and we increased the amount of time that he sat at the activity. But if a child cannot sit there, you're going to just get the behavior. So how can you change the requirements so that they can work to stay at something longer, for example? Okay,
We've done that with a.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So we've done that. We have a little guy that, he can't sit at group time. So we give him an option. He can sit and play. But then we started now setting a timer. So if he can come for 5 minutes, we'll set a 5-minute timer. If you can sit here for 5 minutes, then you can go play with a table toy. Otherwise, he just wants to run around the room.
Perfect. Right. And it's got to be little increments, especially children with autism. Okay. You can't go from 5 to 10 minutes. By December, you might have them up to 7 minutes. By May, you might have him up to 10 minutes, right? It's little increments, but we have to make note of those increments. And then again, the top of this in Kara's kit, any kind of assistance, any kind of teacher assistance is going to be the strongest type of adaptation I can give. Nothing wrong with it, but it's the most intrusive type. So I just went through that quickly because I want to show you now. So this is how Kara's kit works. You can get Kara's kit, the book. It's called Creating Adaptations for Routines, and I have the book in front of me. Routines and Activities is Kara's. But this is what they do, which I really like, and this is why I just kind of went through quickly. They take routines that we go through in our early childhood classroom, and they have many situations that happen, and they then walk through this adaptation continuum and make suggestions. So for example, the middle one, children are distracted and not paying attention during small group. So what's an environmental change I could make? I could decrease the noise in the room. Whoa. Don't you know what that is? I didn't even open mail. I can't click that off. Great. Sorry, I have no idea what that is. Is that out of the screen? Okay. So I could decrease the noise in the room. I could set up space so that the play areas are sectioned for more small group. And again, I know people are thinking about Eckers, but if I have a child that has an IEP and needs this kind of thing, then that's something to consider. But already with Eckers, we make sure that our centers, our loud and quiet centers, are in different areas. So I'm distracted. How could you change the activity? You could make sure that the activity is age appropriate. Maybe I'm distracted because it's too high level for me. Maybe I can't go do puzzles because a 10-piece puzzle is too hard for me. Maybe I need some handle puzzles with just 5 peg type pictures that I put in. They don't have a material adaptation, but changing the requirement, you could slow the pace of your speech to help the child process what you're saying. So again, I really like this Kara's kit if you're able to get this book, because it gives us many situations we go through in our classroom, and then it shows us all on the continuum the different types of adaptations that we can make. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. All right. So we have a little bit of time. This is perfect. In Kara's kit, and I'm going to put this in the chat before you go to your breakout rooms. They have a ton of resources, okay? And they have this adaptation notes. Again, if you like to use it, great. If not, I don't care. But if we have a continuum or building blocks gives you many types of adaptations, you have to say, what's the child doing? Like, why do you even think that they need an adaptation? And after you've figured that out, what is it that you want the child to do? Okay? And then you kind of walk through, how could I change the environment? How could I change the activity? How could I change the materials? Could I change the requirement? And then remember, you always have to have that assessing piece. After you've made those changes, what's happening? Are you seeing what you want to happen? So what I'd like you to do is you're going to go to breakout rooms for about 5 minutes, okay? And I want somebody to, I'm sort of changing this. You can pick a routine in your classroom, but somebody share a child that they're having some issues with, okay? And with that child, what's the routine? What's the activity that they're not participating in? And if you could look at 3 different modifications, come up with 3 different modifications that you could provide for that child. So let me, before I send you to your breakout room, let me share the link for, okay, what's going on here? Oh, here we go. Somehow I need to get, okay, I can't move this Zoom bar. I'm always having issues, aren't I? Oh, there we go. Got it. Okay. Copy this and put this in chat. Okay, so if you like this and you'd like to open this up, that is that Kara's Kit, this adaptation note. But I'm going to send you to your breakout rooms for just 5 minutes. Somebody share a student, and then you have your handout. Think of 3 different types of adaptations that you could try to maybe help this child. Okay? And Mare, you can pause the, once I send them, you can pause them to pause the recording. Oh, okay. Where's everybody? Okay, welcome back. Okay. Oh, some people are, few people. We have one room that's still chatting. All right. I'm sure 5 minutes was not enough time to solve the world's problems, but I hope that the purpose of that was I just want you to think that there's more than one way to adapt. And I know you know that, but I think we get stuck in our same ways, right? Like we've all been using different chairs, but if that child is still having issues in circle time, let's look. Is there something else I could do? Is there a child preference that I could do? Does he need more support? Do I need to start with an adult and start to fade that? Okay. Am I giving that child too much support? Does that child have a one-on-one? And maybe if I just change something in the environment, maybe if I gave that child more space, they would be able to sit longer in group. So that was the purpose of that. I didn't expect you to exactly solve it. But so I just want to end because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. because I too have to cook dinner. So I always like to end sort of with an action plan, okay? So if you would type, we don't have to do 3. I like to do the tomorrow, okay? Tomorrow's Wednesday, it's hump day, middle of the week. What's something you're going to change tomorrow? Did you think of a kid? What's a different adaptation you're going to try tomorrow or try to start implementing within this week? If you would go ahead and type, or if someone wants to unmute, you can also unmute. Order a timer. Peer support.
I'm driving, so yeah, I will bring the mom's picture to circle time.
Perfect. And make a smaller, try if you have time, make a smaller one. Tape on the floor. Yep. And people liked whoever shared the hula hoop. That was a good one. Yes. Peer support. Tape. Okay. And not just tape on the ground. The clipboard for choices outside. Great. Definitely hula hoop. Buy your hula hoops now, people, because I once needed it for something. You can't find them in the winter. Add 2 cube chairs for 2 of my kids. I like that. A timer for a child. Okay, I feel like I've done something. You're thinking about individual children, and that's what I like. And you know what? And some of you like that clipboard for the outside. Again, if other kids want to come up and make choices, that's fine, but they'll stop because they don't need to. A defined pathway using visuals through space. Good one. Okay, perfect. The sand for the more contained area. Okay. Picture instructions for an activity. Okay. All right. Well, if there's any questions, I can stay on for a little bit, but I want to thank you all. I hope that you found this helpful. And again, sometimes when I'm preparing these webinars, I think, is this too basic? Because you guys are in the trenches and you know this, but I like my webinars kind of sometimes to bring us back to the basics. I think we forget, or we get so hung up, this child I was in the classroom and I had 10 boys with autism and it was my first year married. It was not easy, right? But stop looking at the behavior and maybe looking at the meaning of the behavior. So thank you. Come again on October 3rd, and we will dive into embedded learning a little deeper. We will have a raffle winner. You will have a certificate. So thank you very much. And Constance, you were asking one question. Constance, if you want to stay on, I will talk to you just about what setting do you work in?
I work in a early childhood co-op, a special ed, and my peers are not, what's the word to say? They think of the kids as more of a typical child, a typical preschool, and not a special ed. So I have a hard time getting them to understand the reason I do things.